Thank you for joining me for the journey of John. John, our 411. Thank you so much for being here with me. And I do hope that you've had an opportunity to study chapter 1 of John. I do not know how many videos that it will be to get this chapter in, as there are several verses, and I try to keep them at 30 minutes or less. I don't think that it will be more than 2. Hopefully it will be in just 1. But as many have told me just today, Kim, don't worry about the time. Just take your time, and we're gonna, we're not going anywhere. So I'm so thankful for them, their encouragement, and I'm thankful for you that you've joined me for the study of John. Like I said in the introduction, we have until Jesus comes or he calls us home individually to study his word. And so I just want to thank you for being on this journey of John with me. I'm going to begin the chapter with a quote from A.W. Tozer's book, and I may make reference to this book quite a bit. I haven't even finished that book, and I haven't even finished the study of John yet. So, but I do want to share with you some things from the book, And He Dwelt Among Us by A.W. Tozer, and I think I also mentioned that in the introduction of John, and I hope that you've had an opportunity to watch that as well. Before we start, I do want to pray and ask God to have his way in our study time. And I hope that you are making it a habit of praying before you open up your word to study. There's nothing like a study that I lead that takes me to my knees. I am very humbled by this opportunity. I take it very seriously, and you can rest assured that I am always in prayer about what we're going to study when I prepare these videos, and it does take me to my knees. So before we go any further, let's just go ahead and pray. Don't worry about the time. Let's just relax. I do have my notes here that I do want to go by so that I can share with you what I feel that God has really drawn to my attention, and I'm looking forward to reading your comments on our Facebook page, what God has taught you through chapter 1. So please feel free to share those. I love to read your comments, and I try to encourage you to. Some people do. Some people are not as vocal, and that's okay. You do you. But just I hope that you're at least making some notes in your notebook that you've designated for our study of John. Let's pray. Father, thank you so much for your word. Thank you, God, that you've allowed us this opportunity to come together, to bow our heads before you, and to invite you to invade this time. God, I'm not smart enough to relay anything that's profound, only what you give me to share. And I just thank you again for the opportunity to be able to share this time with people that have joined us on this journey. And so I pray that you would have your way, that you would always guard my mouth and my thoughts. And God, I just pray for wisdom. You know that we've talked about wisdom before I came and hit this video recorder. And that you said that anybody that lacks wisdom, to let him come and ask of you, and that you would give it to all men liberally. In the book of James, Lord, that's what you tell us. So God, I'm asking you for wisdom. I'm asking you for clarity of mind, for understanding. And I pray, God, that you would teach us what you want us to know today. And Lord, help us to apply that, to walk in your truth, and for your word to make a difference, that it would live out loud through each and every life. In Jesus' name, amen. As I mentioned earlier, I'm going to begin this chapter with words from A.W. Tozer, and I'm quoting, "And he dwelt among us." I will end it with words before we get started. I'm going to start this chapter with words from A.W. Tozer, and I'm also going to end with a few paragraphs maybe of his book, depending on the time that we have. But here's what he says. Of all the books of the Bible, none presents Christ as supremely as the Gospel of John. The Apostle Paul presents Christ in a theological setting. John uses the mystical setting. John does not disregard theology, for there is plenty of theology in his gospel. Rather, he uses theology as a ladder to climb the heights of Christ's nature. Mystical simply refers to the cultivation of a deep appreciation of the unique nature of Christ and our fascination with him. John is pushing us and encouraging us to ascend into the rarefied atmosphere of experiencing God and the wonderment of his everlastingness. Now, this may make more sense when I close our chapter today with some quotes from him out of this very same book. And I think in the introduction, I did recommend that you buy this book. You don't have to. I just thought for those of you who enjoy reading that you would enjoy this book as well. Now in John chapter 1 we have 51 verses to go over, and there are 9 paragraphs. For those of us who have the New Inductive Study Bible, we know that the paragraph begins with a number that is in bold, and that's how I know that there are 9 paragraphs. Now the way that we're going to study chapter 1 is not the way that we're going to study every single chapter. We may come back to this method, but we will not study every single chapter in the manner that we're going to today. So I just want you to be aware of that. This is to maybe perhaps get you in the habit of studying this way. If you don't already, it introduces you to be carefully look at the 5 W's and the 1 H, asking these questions. And this is to keep us from rushing. This is to help us slow down when we're reading God's Word. So, for example, in verses 1 and 2, the Bible says, "In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was in the beginning with God." Now, when I'm reading that, here's what I'm doing. In the beginning tells us when. Was the what? Was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the what? The Word was God. He was, again it tells us when. He was in the beginning with God. So I hope that you noticed that in both of these verses, in 1 and 2, I hope that you noticed the phrase "in the beginning," because that tells us when. Now, I don't know if you are in the habit of looking up different words, especially those that are repeated. I looked up the word, W-O-R-D. I looked that up in the original Greek definition. I hope that you did too. In the Greek, the word for word is logos, L-O-G-O-S. I know that you've heard that, and it's defined as the sayings of God, the divine expression. In the beginning was the divine expression, was the sayings of God, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. If you'll remember in our introduction, I wanted to share something that I thought was so profound. In the book of Numbers, the Keys to Scripture Numbers, I actually forgot, if you'll forgive me, I actually forgot to get that out and turn to that page because I was looking at something else before the study of this, but right here it is. It's no problem. I've got it. He said, the author of this book, Ed Valo, I think that's how you say his name. It's on page 26 if you have this book. He said, "It will be noticed that the Word is mentioned 3 times, and that God is found 3 times in this quotation. There were 3 in existence in the beginning, and the Christ, the Word, was in the beginning and was one of the divine Trinity. This shows the existence of Christ, the Word, as one of the 3 persons of the Godhead. This established the reincarnate existence of Christ. The fourth time the Word is found is in John 1:14. And the Word became flesh and dwelt among us, and we saw his glory, glory as of the only begotten from the Father, full of grace and truth. He goes on to say, 4 is the number for the world, the flesh, or first creation. So the first 3 times Christ is called the Word is in the place where he existed as one of the Trinity in the beginning. The 4th time it is mentioned is where the Word became flesh. Now let's look at verses 3 through 5. All things came into being, and then it tells us how. Through him. And apart from who? Him, nothing came into being that has come into being. In him, tells us who, in him was what? It was life. And the life was the what? Light of men. The light shines where? In the darkness. And the darkness did not what? It did not comprehend. It did not overpower it. The word life is repeated in these verses. And the word for life in these passages is Z-O-E. It means literally or figuratively breath, spirit, to live. I also found it interesting that the word light, also a word that is repeated in the Greek, is P-H-O-S, and it means to shine or make manifest, especially by rays, and it means luminousness. His very breath, spirit was life, and it was manifested. It was luminous. Now let's look at the second paragraph, verses 6 through 8. There came a man sent from who? God, whose name was what? John. Now, side note, John was the son of Elizabeth and Zechariah. He, John, came as a what? He came as a witness. That means that he was an evidence giver, that he was one to report. He was to testify, which means to serve as an evidence or proof of something's existence. He gave witness. He came to give witness about the light, and it tells us why. So that who? All might believe through him, through John. He was not what? He was not the light. But he came to what? John, came to testify about the light. John knew who he was, and he knew who Jesus was. Remember the definition of light? It means to shine or make manifest luminousness. God sent John through elderly parents to be a witness, to testify about the light. And you're going to see the word testify, testified, or testimony repeated in verses 7, 8, 15, 19, 32, and 34. That's a key repeated word. Y'all watch for those through our study. John was sent to do a job. He was sent to be a witness. He was sent to testify. God sent him. So I want you to know this. I want you to have that foundation. Our purpose as believers in Christ is to witness and to testify to others about the Word and the light, the one who came to give us life. Now, I don't know about you. I could do a lot better in this area. Maybe some of you are doing great in that area. I do not. I'm confessing that. But I want us to pause long enough to remember that John is he was sent as the forefront person, the messenger of God. He was a miracle himself. I mean, his parents were elderly. Now, I've read that Elizabeth was 88, that Zechariah was 99, but in Luke 1, it states that they were advanced in years, so the possibilities were slim to none at their age of being able to conceive. But we know that God is able, that He is the creator of all, and whom He chooses, He equips, and who He calls and sends must go and do. He had a reason, he had a job for John, and he has something for each of us to do, to tell others, to be a light, and to point others to Jesus. Now, I just don't want you to overlook the miracle of John and his elderly parents. I'm sure we could count ourselves out due to our ages in order to do something specific or something great or something at all for the cause of Christ because, we're too old. And we just really count ourselves out. I've been guilty of the very same thing. I'm going to be 60 this year in 2024. And I'm thinking, well, I've done just about all I can do. But as long as there's still breath in our lungs, don't count yourself out. I can't count myself out. God has a plan to use us to help others, to encourage others, to love others, and to witness to others. And I hope that we will take heart and do that very thing. I just want to remind you, don't disregard yourselves because of your age. God's not finished with you yet. He's not finished with me yet. Now let's look at the third paragraph in verses 9 through 13. It says, there was what? The true light, which coming where? Into the world, enlightens every man. And it can be read, which enlightens every person coming into the world. He was where? He was in the world, and the what? The world was made how? Your scripture tells you, through him, and the world did not know him. A.W. Tozer said, and I'm quoting, the world you see round about you did not come into existence of itself, but is an effect of that which the Bible calls the Word. End quote. He came to his own, and those who were his own did not receive him. I have to share one more quote from A.W. Tozer on this particular verse. I found it to be so beautiful when reading the book, And He Dwelt Among Us. It says, He came. The story of pity and mercy and redeeming love are all here in two words. He came. All the pity that God is capable of feeling, all the mercy that He is capable of showing, and all the redeeming grace that He could pour out of His heart are at least suggested here in the two simple words, He came. End quote. I just love that. Thought it was beautiful. Now, I want you to pay attention in the study of John, any study that you do, to the word but, B-U-T. Always there's a contrast. That means slow down, there's a contrast. It goes on to say, but as many as received him, to them, those who received him, he gave the right to become what? Children of God, even to those who what? Believe his name, who were born not of blood, nor of the will of the flesh, nor of the will of man, but of God. As many as received him, to them he gave the right to become children of God. Now, I wanted to note that not by the will of flesh and blood, but the will of God. When I looked up the word sons used in the KJV in place of children in the NASB, it means a child as produced. It's a daughter or a son. So that means all, both male and female. For those who received him, they became a product of him. Now, let's look at the fourth paragraph in verses 14 through 18. And the Word, the divine expression, and the Word became flesh and did what? Dwelt among us, and we saw his what? His glory. Glory as of the only begotten. When you see that only begotten, that means unique, only one of his kind. From the Father, full of grace and truth. I have experienced his fullness of grace and truth. Now, I want you to note that the word glory in this verse is the Greek word for doxa, and here's what it means: as very apparent. And the Word, the divine expression, became flesh and dwelt among us, and we saw his glory. It also means, in a wide application, dignity. It means honor. It means praise. It means worship. They beheld him, the only begotten, unique one, full of grace and truth in all his dignity. I too have beheld and received him in his fullness of grace and truth, as I mentioned earlier. I don't know about you, but I'm telling you, I'm so thankful for the truth. I'm so thankful for the fullness of God's grace towards me in my life, and I'm sure that you are too. I wrote that I'm so thankful I wasn't there that day, but I was on June 17th, 1979, when I became a Christian. John testified about him, talking about Jesus, and he cried out saying, "This was he of whom I said, he who comes after me," that tells us when, John's telling us when, "he who comes after me has a higher rank than I, for he existed before me." I love how John knew his place, and I'm afraid that many in high positions in our churches have forgotten that Christ is head over them. John even reiterates this again in verse 30, so watch for it. "For of his fullness we have all received, and grace upon grace." Literally, grace for grace. Now, let me introduce you or remind you to the beautiful word grace in the original Greek definition. Many of us have studied this repeatedly, but for those of you who are new to our study, let me just introduce you to the beautiful Greek word for grace, which is charis. It means, if you're taking notes, it means concrete, the divine influence upon the heart and its reflection in the life. It means benefit, favor, gift, joy, pleasure. And we first saw this word in verse 14, where it said full of grace. Either translation KJV or NASB, we see the word grace 2 times there. So it's stacked. For the law was given through who? Moses. Grace and truth were realized, which means came to be, through who? Jesus Christ. No one has seen who? No one has seen God at any time. The only begotten God who is in the bosom of the Father, he has explained or declared him. We have that beautiful duo, grace and truth, that we've read about, talked about, stated again as we first saw it in verse 14. So let's also look at two verses found in your cross references regarding the fact that no one has seen God. Look at John 6:46. Not that anyone has seen the Father except the one who is from God. He has seen the Father. Look at Colossians 1, verse 15. He is the image of the invisible God, the firstborn of all creation. All right, now let's look at the 5th paragraph, verses 19 through 23. This is the testimony of John when the Jews sent to him priests and Levites from where? Jerusalem, to ask him. I hope that you double underline Jerusalem. That's a geographical location. This is the testimony of John when the Jews sent to him priests and Levites from Jerusalem to ask him, "Who are you?" And he confessed and did not deny, but confessed, "I am not the Christ." They asked him, "What then? Are you Elijah?" And he said, "I am not." "Are you the prophet?" And he answered, "No." Then they said to him, "Who are you? So that we may give an answer to those who, which are the Jews, who sent us. What do you say about yourself?" He said, quote, "I am the voice of one crying in the wilderness, make straight the way, a road, a progress, a means, a journey of the Lord, as Isaiah the prophet said." So I hope that you've marked the words testify, testimony, cried out in the same way, because it means the same. So the priests and the Levites were sent to question, and they received their answer that he was the voice crying, "Make straight the way of the Lord." That's what I want. I pray that my voice will cry out on behalf of the Lord. Now, we definitely have found ourselves living somewhat in a wilderness, and our paths, our journey should be a testimony of God's grace and his truth. Now, we're going to look at the 6th paragraph, verses 24 through 28. Now, they had been sent by the Pharisees. They asked him and said to him, "Why then are you doing what? Why then are you baptizing if you are not the Christ or Elijah nor the prophet?" John answered them, saying, "I baptize," and that means baptizo, meaning to make fully wet. "I baptize in water, meaning in, with, or by. That's how I baptize. But among you stands one who you do not know. It is he who comes after me, the thong of whose sandal I am not worthy to untie." These things took place where at? In Bethany, beyond the Jordan, where John was baptizing. I love John's humility. He had been created for this purpose. He knew what his calling was. He was obedient to his purpose and knew that the one coming after him was greater than he was, and that he himself was not even worthy to untie the sandal of the one coming, the one who had always been. John was focused on doing what he was to do. I think that's a great lesson and a great reminder to all of us. Now we're going to pick up in the next video and finish out this chapter. There are some things that I wanted to share with you, and I'm so excited and looking forward to doing that very thing. But I want you to go back. I want you to read the verses 1 through 28 and read those, look up those definitions, make some notes, and just dwell on the fact that John, being a miracle from two elderly parents, he was sent to testify of the one coming. I hope you enjoy it. I hope that you dig your heels deep and firm into the Word. See you next time.